It's no big deal, right? Costco has a membership fee and all. So it really helps out. Sarah tries to drag me along for her shopping trips just because she wants to go. Her attitude, only thinking of what benefits her, irked me so much that I repeatedly refused. But she just keeps insisting it's no big deal, making no progress in the conversation. Eventually, she even starts planning the day as if I've already agreed to go, despite my clear refusal.
Sure, when should we do it?
Thomas, my husband, suddenly joins the conversation and astonishingly agrees with Sarah, leaving me dumbfounded by his response. Hey, what are you thinking? That's Sarah, you know. She's definitely going to make us pay again.
I'm planning to get back at her this time.
It seems Thomas has some plan in mind to deal with Sarah's behavior. He's plotting some incredible revenge, but only if Sarah acts as shamelessly as she always does. I decided to go along with Thomas's strategy. I am Mary. This year, my child started kindergarten, and I've been busy with their education and neighborhood socializing. Luckily, most of the mom friends are kind, helping with various things about our kids and giving parenting advice. I try to help out when I can, feeling good about the strong relationships I've built. Except for one of the mom friends. Her name is Sarah. She's the only one who often needs help from me and others, claiming to be a self-proclaimed baby. She hardly ever reciprocates the help. For example, when the mom friends plan to eat out, she somehow appears and joins us often. That's not a big deal, but her attitude towards other people's food is. Can I have a bite? She often asks this. I don't have much cash on me today. She hints at wanting us to treat her. Other mom friends have shared similar experiences, feeling the same way about her. When I go shopping by car, she often appears, persistently asking for a ride. I don't mind if we are going to the same place, but Sarah is just too brazen. I rushed out and forgot my wallet. What will you do? Go back to get it? No, it's too embarrassing now. Can I pay you back later? When I take her shopping, it always ends up like this. She forgets her wallet or leaves her card and makes excuses, never pulling out her wallet. She says she'll pay back later, but Sarah hardly ever does. Even when I show her the receipts and press her, she makes excuses like not having money or asking to wait until payday. You're really strict about money, Mary. Finally, when I confronted her directly, even involving Sarah's husband, that's what she said. Sarah's husband is reasonable and pays me back while apologizing. But Sarah herself shows no remorse and doesn't care. It may seem like a few dollars, but these incidents add up to a significant amount every month. It's stressful to have to go through all this every time I shop, trying to get reimbursed. It would be best to refuse her at the outset, but Sarah uses her child to manipulate the situation. Our kids are close, and she makes plans with my child before asking my permission. It's hard to say no when she uses the children, and I can't ask my young son not to be friends with her. Other mom friends sympathize, but it seems they also prefer to keep their distance from Sarah. Hey, can you go shopping for me instead?
What? Why?
That mom friend I told you about is being persistent.
Just tell her no clearly.
I tried discussing it with Thomas, but he didn't take it seriously, not knowing Sarah's character. He said children are children, parents are parents, and even told me to be more assertive. Wondering what to do, one day Thomas came home looking extremely tired. I thought it was work-related, but it turns out Sarah had cornered him as he was going to his car. Thomas, perfect timing. Can you give me a lift on your way? While waiting at a traffic light, Sarah spotted our car and approached him. She tried to force her way into the passenger seat, not even considering Thomas might refuse. When Thomas refused, she threw a fit, screaming and calling out Thomas's name in the middle of the road, trying to call him back.
It's crazy to yell like that on the street.
That's what I've been telling you. Sarah is a handful.
There's a limit to being a handful, right? Then she even asked for travel expenses.
It turned out to be a terrible commute for Thomas with many traffic lights, making it hard to shake her off. After dropping her off, I wondered where Sarah, without any travel money, was planning to go. Thomas, finally realizing the extent of Sarah's selfish behavior, was completely worn out.
What is she really thinking?
That's why I wanted you to do the shopping.
Even with me, she doesn't care, huh?
Thomas looked bewildered, at a loss about what to do with Sarah. I was also at my wits' end. Then one day, Sarah approached me with a suggestion. Hey Mary, I've been wanting to go to Costco. Is that so? Want to come with me? It's cheap and cost effective. Do you go there often? No, I'm not a member. Sarah's sudden proposal left me giving non-committal responses. She seemed quite knowledgeable about Costco despite not being a member. Thomas is a Costco member, and we occasionally shop in bulk, so I was aware of it. However, I had no intention of taking Sarah shopping with me. I just nodded along, thinking she was probably after my wallet. Let's go, Mary. You're a member, right? I am not a member. Oh, then Thomas? That's fine too, and I'd like a ride in your car. Why do you know about that? I got a ride from Thomas the other day. I saw Costco shopping bags in the car. Hearing this, I couldn't help but grimace and exclaimed, Oh, wow. You know, non-members can't even pay at Costco, right? So just leave the checkout to me. I'll pay you back later. You hardly ever pay back. It'll be fine this time, right? Even though I doubted her intentions, Sarah, as usual, spoke to my child. Can we go shopping together? She asked, and my son cheerfully agreed. Then, the kids can stay with my husband. We haven't agreed to go yet. Come on, it's fine, right? Costco has a membership fee, and it helps. I repeatedly refused Sarah, who only thinks of her own benefit, even telling her not to make promises using the children. But she wouldn't listen and started planning the day as if I had agreed.
What's this about?
Oh, Thomas, we were just about to make plans to go to Costco together.
Sure, when should we do it?
Thomas, who had come to pick me up, astonishingly agreed with Sarah, leaving me doubting my ears. Sarah happily ran to Thomas and quickly made plans to go to Costco the following weekend. After Sarah left, I nudged Thomas and couldn't help but complain. Hey, what are you thinking? That's Sarah, you know.
I know, but she said she'd bring money, right?
That's definitely a lie. She's going to make us pay again.
I plan to get back at her this time.
Thomas seemed to have something in mind to deal with Sarah's actions. Feeling anxious, I laughed when I heard this plan. He's plotting an incredible revenge, but only if Sarah acts as shamelessly as she always does. Plus, if this could make Sarah stay away from us, I found myself gratefully going along with Thomas's plan. Finally, the day to go to Costco arrived. Sarah, in a good mood from the morning, hopped into our car as if it was natural and asked me if I had forgotten anything. Did you make sure to bring your wallet? It'd be a problem if you forgot it.
Aren't you the one who often forgets?
Don't worry, I've got it. I was irritated by Sarah's words, but Thomas replied to her cheerfully. Normally, I would have asked her to show her wallet right there, but I held back, thinking of Thomas's plan. Sarah seemed well aware of Costco's system, knowing that only members can make payments. She probably knew that shopping there would inevitably lead to Thomas paying. This would allow her to push the payment onto us as usual. And even if she forgot her wallet later, she wouldn't have to pay. Sarah's intentions were clear, and Thomas seemed to understand them too. Sarah cheerfully headed into the store, quickly placing a basket in the cart and rushing off. Wow, what a great selection! It's hard to choose! Sarah happily stuffed items into the basket as she went along. When I suggested keeping our baskets separate to avoid confusion, she took another cart and continued adding items without hesitation. Thomas whispered to me that Sarah wasn't even looking at the prices, which made me laugh. Clearly, Sarah had no intention of paying, so we decided to go through with Thomas's plan. That was fun! Oh, Mary, is that all you're buying? Yeah, we still have stock at home and we can always come back. Really? Invite me again next time. I swallowed the words. I didn't invite you this time. and we lined up at the farthest register. As we watched the crowded registers, Thomas took out his wallet and Sarah opened her bag. I watched closely as Sarah, rummaging through her small bag, predictably exclaimed, "Oh? Oops! Sorry, I think I forgot my wallet." "Even though you said it was fine in the car?" "I'm sorry, okay? Can I pay you back later?" Sarah's basket had much more stuff than ours, seemingly worth about $200 to $300, but she showed no concern about the amount in her wallet. Without mentioning paying back later at home, it was clear she had no intention of paying. Thomas and I exchanged glances and nodded. "Oh, really? Sorry, I think my parents are calling." I said this, handed my basket to Thomas, and stepped away from the line, hiding near a nearby shelf to watch them. Sarah seemed unconcerned, chatting with Thomas.
"It's a shame you forgot your wallet after buying so much."
"Really a shame, but it's great to have a friend who'll pay for me."
Oh, I forgot to buy something. Can you wait here in line for me?"
I guess I have to, but don't make me wait too long." Pacifying the dissatisfied Sarah, Thomas also stepped out of the line. Sunday mornings are especially busy at Costco, so as soon as Sarah turned to the register, she disappeared into the crowd.
"What now? I wonder."
With a cart full of stuff, she can't just say she's not buying it, right? Exchanging these words and a wry smile from behind the shelves, we headed to the farthest register on the opposite side. Watching Sarah, she seemed to be slowly passing her place in line to the people behind, waiting for us. On a busy Sunday morning with many people planning to have lunch there, it was unlikely for her to spot us from afar. We paid and left the store first. Getting into the car, we waited for a bit. Just as we were about to inform her, I saw a message from Sarah on my mobile phone. "Hey, still? Come on, don't make me wait too long." Can't believe she's still online without her wallet.
Maybe it's time to tell her the truth and ask her to come back to the car.
Yeah. We laughed, seeing that she was still diligently waiting. I wondered what she would have done if we didn't have enough money to pay for all the stuff she bought. As expected, when we told her we were already done with checkout and back at the car, an infuriated Sarah called us. "Hey, what are you thinking? I haven't finished shopping yet." "If you don't have your wallet, you can't shop in the first place. Come back soon." "Don't be ridiculous. Stop joking and come back to pay." "We're not paying. Do you have any idea how much money you've made us spend until now?" The back and forth continued for a while, with Sarah insisting I should pay since I brought her. Eventually, Thomas got fed up before I did, saying if she didn't want to go home, it couldn't be helped, and he started the car. When Sarah asked how she was supposed to get back, Thomas said she'd be just fine.
"Maybe she'll just force herself into someone else's car?"
Thomas joked, still holding a grudge for her suddenly getting into our car before. Despite my repeated warnings that we'd leave her if she didn't come back, Sarah wouldn't listen. I felt bad about leaving her, but there was nothing more I could do after being pushed to this point. She'll figure something out, I thought, and we left the store. The next day I heard Sarah somehow got back by taking multiple buses. While Thomas laughed about her actually having her wallet, an angry Sarah showed up at our house looking furious. "You left me and I couldn't even shop. That's terrible." "It's your fault for not bringing any money to shop in the first place." "Still, who leaves someone behind? You could have just paid." "And let you skip out on paying, like always?" "You always say that. Mary, you're really stingy about money." She kept yelling her selfish arguments, angry that I didn't pay this time. She even demanded compensation for being hurt, causing a scene at the front door.
"What's going on? Why are you shouting?"
"Oh, Jessica, listen! Mary was terrible to me." It was Jessica, a chatty mom friend who happened to pass by. Sarah, seeing her, smirked nastily, probably planning to tell Jessica how awful I was and spread it around the neighborhood. "Mary said she'd take me shopping, but then left me there."
"Oh? Isn't that the story where you forced yourself into a promise?"
"What? No! Mary said let's go." Who invites someone who always forgets their wallet and expects others to pay? Well, and then you try to get someone to pay again and got left behind. That's what you deserve. Jessica, instead of spreading the rumor, pointed out the truth, leaving Sarah speechless. I had already talked to Jessica about what happened yesterday, pretending to seek advice, anticipating that Sarah would spread lies. After being scolded by Jessica, Sarah left with a red face. Jessica, saying it was a disaster, seemed a bit amused. She'd probably talk about Sarah's actions around the neighborhood. Following that, Sarah couldn't correct the story, and her misdeeds quickly spread, thanks to Jessica. Sarah tried to gain allies but ended up spreading too much herself and didn't receive help from anyone. Instead, she was criticized and became more isolated in the neighborhood. It's all your fault! Even though I felt leaving her behind might have been too much, Sarah continued to blame me. She was scolded by her husband and started avoiding me. People who were tired of Sarah's behavior said I did well, so I hope this is settled now. Because of Sarah, I had been distant from others, but this incident helped me become friends with those I couldn't get close to before. We started going shopping together, of course, paying for our own items. We've built a good, reciprocal relationship.
Hello there, I'm Alice, a 32-year-old woman. Right now, I'm 9 months pregnant. On this day, my husband and I are driving over to his family's home. It's a mere 30-minute drive from the apartment where we live. It's not far at all, so we tend to visit 2 or 3 times a month. Today, we decided to make a trip after hearing that my mother-in-law was baking her famous apple pie. She's a very sweet lady. After the loss of her husband last year, she was really down and didn't know what to do. But she's recovered now, eagerly waiting for the birth of her grandchild. However, not everyone is thrilled about us having a child. One of those people is my sister-in-law, Brianna. According to mother-in-law, Brianna married 6 years before us, but so far there are no signs of her being pregnant. She even started fertility treatments 2 years ago, but still no baby. With all the pressure from around, she's become quite irritable lately. Mother-in-law had asked us to avoid meeting Brianna as much as possible, so we always tried to visit when she wasn't around. But on this day, to our surprise, Brianna showed up unexpectedly. Well, long time no see, Alice. You've put on some weight, haven't you? You're not just lazing around at home because you're pregnant, right? You look like a seal, all round and ready to roll down a hill. I was dumbfounded by her immediate and sharp remark. Hey sis, how can you say something like that right off the bat? She's 9 months pregnant. Of course her belly's gonna be big. You're gonna make enemies with pregnant women all over the world talking like that. My husband quickly jumped to my defense, leaving me speechless. Oh, please, I'm just thinking about Alice, okay? It's tough if a pregnant woman gets too heavy, you know? I just want Alice to be aware of her responsibilities as a mother. She claimed she was just thinking about me. I knew well enough that arguing back would only cause more problems. Thank you, sister-in-law. Yes, you're right. I should be more careful. I chose non-confrontational words, but she huffed and said, just because you're pregnant doesn't mean you can be lazy. So start cleaning this house right now. You're lacking exercise, right? You can at least do that much. She then handed me a broom and dustpan she had picked up from nearby and demanded that I clean. But after being scolded by my mother-in-law and my husband for harassing me, she sulked and secluded herself in an upstairs room. I'm sorry, Alice. She just showed up at the house all of a sudden. I told her to leave. Mother-in-law apologized with a regretful look on her face. It's fine, mother-in-law. I'm not bothered. I'm sorry, Alice. That's just how my sister is. My husband also apologized along with mother-in-law. After that, we spent a pleasant time together, enjoying the apple pie mother-in-law had made and sipping on tea. We called out to Brianna too, but there was no response. Although we were worried, she never showed up in the end. However, I had no idea that a shocking incident would occur just a few days later. It happened when I went to my in-laws' house alone because I needed to speak with mother-in-law. As I wondered why the front door was unlocked, I discovered Brianna in the living room. Sister-in-law, what brings you here? I heard from mother-in-law that you had to work today. I wasn't in the mood, so I took the day off. And I was surprised to see you here. You disrupted my cleaning last time. Now please, get back to work. With that, she thrust the broom and dustpan back at me. I decided to clean as much as I could to avoid any trouble. But that day, I was feeling discomfort from early morning, and during the cleaning, I began to feel pain in my stomach. Just as I thought of taking a short break, my sister-in-law kicked my stomach, which resulted in my water breaking. The pain escalated, and I fell down on the spot. It hurts! Somebody, please help! I took out my mobile phone from my pocket and quickly dialed mother-in-law. The baby is in trouble. I managed to utter these words before losing consciousness. When I woke up, I found myself in a hospital bed with an IV in my arm, and my body was wrapped in an electric blanket. Where am I? Wait, what about my baby? I tried to sit up, but the pain in my abdomen stopped me. Not only that, my stomach, which was supposed to be large, had shrunk, and I was shocked. I pressed the nurse call button, and when the nurse came, I asked what had happened. Apparently, my water had broken, and I had to give birth via emergency cesarean. The baby was small and therefore in an incubator, but was said to be in good health. Mother-in-law and my husband, who had rushed in, were also informed by the doctor. Their faces were red with anger. I decided to visit the baby once I felt better, and tried to sleep as much as possible to recover quickly. However, the next day, an unbelievable person showed up in my room. It was my sister-in-law, who had kicked me, and her husband. They walked into the room without even knocking. I frowned at their impudence. And when the two absurd people suggested, "We'll pay you. Let's settle this," I felt a chill. When I didn't agree, they lashed out at me with every offensive word they could think of towards my tired face from the cesarean operation. Thinking that my daughter had to go through such a thing because of these people, something inside me snapped. A settlement? Are you kidding me? Don't make me laugh. I'll ruin your life. The two of them were enraged by my words and continued to shout at me. What are you saying? We're offering a solution with money here. Aren't you thankful? Alice, didn't your parents teach you to obey your elders? We're telling you to settle. Just agree, quietly. My brother-in-law also joined in, and as we were arguing, forgetting it was a hospital room, the door suddenly swung open, loudly. I've heard everything. I'm sorry, but I have absolutely no intention of settling. My husband has a good build and is tall, so his deep voice was imposing. They didn't seem to expect my husband to show up, and the two who were talking so confidently until now were completely taken aback. Long time no see, Finn. It's a coincidence to meet you here. My brother-in-law said this, but his face seemed tense. It truly is a coincidence. I didn't expect to meet you here, and I never imagined I'd hear such words from you two. I would appreciate an explanation. We were all in the room when they said it, so there's no room for any excuses. Hey, don't be so angry, Finn. It's not like we had ill intentions. We just feel bad for what we did to Alice. That's why we're offering money, hoping to settle this out of court. My sister-in-law explained with a trembling voice, but my husband's fury didn't subside. The one who decides whether this will be a settlement or not is Alice, not you. Besides, do you think this is a situation that can be solved with money? Alice had an emergency C-section. The baby's in an incubator. You endangered both their lives. Do you even understand that? My husband exploded, letting his emotions get the best of him. As for me, I also couldn't forgive them just because they were throwing money at us. I agree with my husband. No amount of money can make this right. You will face the consequences of your actions. It seemed like my sister-in-law assumed that throwing money at us would make us forgive them. But this situation was not that simple. Thankfully, both my daughter and I, although she was in an incubator, were fine. But had there been any mistake, we might not be here now. And it seemed like my sister-in-law was entirely oblivious to this. I suspected my brother-in-law felt the same way. Thinking about this, I realized I couldn't forgive them or consider a settlement lightly. At my words, my sister-in-law flared up and raised her voice. What do you mean? This is all because of her! She knew I couldn't get pregnant, and yet she kept rubbing her belly in front of me. Was that a jab at me? I was furious. That's why I did what I did, to make sure she never does anything like that again. Now I knew why she had kicked me, but there was something that didn't make sense. I hadn't met her often since I got pregnant, and every time she saw me, she would go into her room and not come out. So how did she see me rubbing my belly? That part was a mystery to me. But no matter what she said now, it wouldn't erase what she had done. Neither my husband nor I had any intention of forgiving her. I understand that you're struggling, but that doesn't justify doing something like this to Alice. No matter the reason, endangering a life is never acceptable. My husband explained the obvious to them, but they were each looking elsewhere, not even trying to listen to us. It seemed like they wanted to get over with this as soon as possible. Seeing the two of them not showing any remorse, I felt my condition worsen. Are we done here? I just had surgery and I'm not feeling well. If you continue to cause a ruckus in this room, I'll call the police. Arguing here wasn't going to resolve anything, and talking to the two of them was too hard for me, as I was still recovering. After my husband kicked them out, I sighed heavily. We had enough evidence because my husband had recorded their conversation. My mother-in-law was also unable to contain her anger because of what her daughter had done, putting my life and that of her grandchild in danger. And so, we decided to press charges against my sister-in-law. We filed a complaint with the police. My sister-in-law was taken to the police station. Afterwards, through a lawyer, we started negotiations. But my sister-in-law insisted to the lawyer, I've done nothing wrong. This woman has been flaunting her pregnancy in front of me, causing me emotional distress when I myself am struggling with infertility. She's not innocent either, so she should be open to a settlement. At first, she had been eager to pay any amount of money, but then she began to claim her innocence. She insisted we should just pretend none of this happened because we were both at fault. When she first saw my husband in the hospital, she was visibly intimidated. But now, determined to avoid paying, she put up a stubborn fight throughout the process. However, she had no idea our conversation in the hospital room had been recorded. As soon as the evidence was presented, both their faces turned ashen. Even with such clear evidence, you still claim your innocence? I'm afraid that won't fly. After enduring so much insult and our refusal to agree to a settlement, my sister-in-law, in anger, flung the coffee that was before her at us. Thankfully, the coffee was cold, so we didn't get burned. Furthermore, their outrageous behavior and language in the office resulted in additional charges, forcing them to increase the compensation amount. Trying to calm his infuriated wife, my brother-in-law left the office. With the assault charges against me and the current incident, the amount we demanded from my sister-in-law had become substantial. When we told my mother-in-law about what had happened, she looked deeply remorseful, saying, I'm so sorry for what my daughter has done. There's no need for you to agree to a settlement. I'll make sure she faces the consequences. She apologized tearfully. I couldn't help but think, how could a grown-up cause so much distress to their own parents? Somehow, I felt incredibly sorry for my mother-in-law. In the end, my sister-in-law was asked to pay a hefty compensation. Shocked by the amount, she called me repeatedly, insisting that we should reduce the amount because we were both at fault. I could not comprehend how she could make such an argument after all she had done. No matter how many times you call, the answer remains the same. We have no intention to reduce the amount, nor to agree to a settlement. Honestly, your calls are becoming a nuisance. Please stop. Because she was so persistent, I ended up snapping at her. This caused her to lose her temper, and, unbelievably, she barged into my apartment. Hey, you're there, right? I know you're in there. Get out here, now! Coward. I was resting on the sofa due to the pain from my surgery when she started pounding on the door and shouting these incomprehensible insults. Hey, what on earth are you doing? Is everything okay with you? Your shouting is disturbing everyone else. Please stop. I yelled back at her while she continued to bang on the door. There were elderly people and families with babies in the apartment. Despite it being past 8 p.m., she was causing such a ruckus. I wondered if she ever considered that people might be sleeping. Of course, my husband was still at work and hadn't returned home. Since I got discharged from the hospital, I've been visiting my daughter every day. Feeling unwell and dealing with her unannounced visit and the commotion, I was at my wit's end. No matter how many times you come here, my mind won't change. Please don't come here anymore, I said, fighting back despite feeling unwell and pale. But my sister-in-law was desperate for a settlement, and my concerns seemed to be irrelevant to her. I didn't do this because I wanted to, you know. It's because of your intrusions that things have come to this. It's presumptuous of you to get pregnant before me. Shouldn't you have been more considerate and waited to get pregnant after us? It seemed like she saw pregnancy as some sort of competition. I don't think pregnancy is a competition, or that it's more honorable to get pregnant first. But for my sister-in-law, who has struggled with infertility for many years, it seemed like she viewed pregnancy in that way. Everyone has different values, but that's no excuse to hurt others. I understand you're upset about not being able to have children, but that's no reason to hurt others. So I cannot forgive you. You put my daughter in danger, and for that, you will be held responsible. Above everything else, the fact that she had hurt my daughter was unforgivable. Just then, the sound of sirens could be heard from outside. It seems that someone in the apartment had reported the disturbance. Well, I suppose if you're banging on someone's door and yelling at this hour, it's inevitable that the police would be called. What do you mean the police are here? Open the door! You have to hide me! Despite my sister-in-law's pleas for me to hide her, I had no intention of doing so. The police arrived at the apartment and began questioning her. I also explained the situation from my perspective. Just at that moment, my husband came back to the apartment, and I filled him in on what had happened. Considering what had happened before, my husband told the police everything, and they took my sister-in-law away in their car. That night, my brother-in-law called to tell me that he was divorcing my sister-in-law and asked me not to involve him in this issue, a rather self-serving request. Apparently, one of my husband's colleagues had been at the hospital where I was admitted, and he overheard my brother-in-law's conversation. When he got to work, the gossip spread among the female employees, and my brother-in-law was looked down upon. The situation worsened, and somehow the story reached the HR department. My brother-in-law, realizing he couldn't talk his way out of it, confessed everything. He was then told that someone like him couldn't stay in the company and was going to be transferred to a regional office. So he doesn't want to get involved in any more problems. I can't deal with her issues anymore. If any more problems arise, I'll be fired. So please leave me out of it. With that, he hung up, and I haven't heard from him since. Afterward, we received a substantial compensation from my sister-in-law, and to ensure she would never come near us again, we changed our phone numbers and moved away. Even if she ran out of money and needed help, she wouldn't know where to find us. A few months later, my daughter was discharged from the hospital. She didn't have any lingering effects and was growing up healthy. Rumor has it that my sister-in-law was in substantial debt. At first, she was moving from friend to friend, but she was never contributing to the living expenses and stayed for far too long, so they kicked her out. My sister-in-law, who has no place to live and no money, is working part-time to pay off her debts.
Oh, there are poor people here. I can't stand to eat in the same place as these people. Let's complain to the waiter and ask him to kick them out. I agree. If we're around these people, we'll look low class. My sister and her husband, whom we ran into on our New Year's trip to Hawaii, decided that we were poor, and they bullied us. They would say, Don't ignore us, you ugly bitch. This is no place for someone like you. You need to get the hell out of here. You're not my sister. What? You forgot about me, your cute little sister? I know you're still upset that I took your fiancé. You're so jealous of me. I heard you're still working. Working even after you're married? Poor you. The two of them started making fun of not only me, but also my husband. I could put up with it if it was just about me, but I couldn't stand listening to them make fun of my husband. I had had enough, and I sprang out of my chair, but my husband stood in front of me to stop me. My name is Katie. I work as a medical receptionist at a general hospital. I didn't have any special skills, but when I thought about my future, I knew I wanted to help people. That's when I decided to work in the medical field. After 2 years of studying at a vocational school, I found a job at a general hospital. My parents recognized my hard work and were proud of me for choosing a career in medical administration. But my sister's reaction was the exact opposite. She said, "This is a job that anyone could do, and it's perfect for you." She laughed. My sister Miley has always been like that. She looks down on me and makes fun of me on a regular basis. Miley is pretty. When we were in junior high, people called her the prettiest girl in her grade. She gets a lot of compliments, and she's always boasting about her looks. She calls me ugly and acts like I'm pitiful. If it seems like anyone can do it, I thought maybe I should do things only I can bring to the table. I try to smile all the time and be really polite and more cheerful than others. It sounds easy, but it's very difficult. But I was determined to do my job well, and I told myself that I will not fail. I was very happy to know that there were people out there who watched me and recognized it. You're always energetic. Dr. Ken Smith, a doctor at the hospital, spoke to me. I rarely interact with doctors, but Dr. Smith knew my name. Your smile always heals me, Katie. I thought it sounded a tiny bit inappropriate, but it was nice to be recognized. After that, we talked whenever we saw each other at the hospital, and a little while after that, Dr. Smith asked me out. After a few dates, he confessed his feelings for me and asked me to be his girlfriend. Shortly before my 22nd birthday, he asked me to marry him. Will you marry me? Ken proposed to me. I said yes, and we made plans to meet each other's parents. I'm glad I chose a job that helps people. I was happy to work at the hospital, but my happiness was shattered in a split second out of nowhere. Don't worry about coming to my parents to meet them. 2 days before the day I was supposed to meet them, he sends me this out of the blue. I was confused, so I wrote back immediately. Does it not work for their schedule or something? We can reschedule for another day. But Ken responded and said things that I never would have expected. I said don't worry about coming. I'm breaking up with you, Katie. For a second, it felt like time stopped. I didn't know what he was saying. I immediately called him. What do you mean? You met my parents. Just act like it never happened. What's wrong? You said you'd keep working after we got married, and you didn't listen to me. Well, I realized that I'd rather have an obedient woman than someone like you. It's like he was a different person. I was, of course, shocked that he broke up with me, but I couldn't believe how he changed all of a sudden. What? You said my smile heals you. I can't believe you're breaking up with me after we got engaged. Huh? That was just something I said to make you feel good. I chose you because you were the youngest, decent-looking woman at the time. You're horrible. I'm a doctor. There are better women out there more suitable for a doctor like me. Who? I had a bad feeling, and it was way worse than I thought it could be. I'm going to marry Miley. I don't need you anymore. Miley? I should have gone to your parents' house earlier. I could have met her a while ago instead of wasting a year of my life. I started thinking, when Ken came to my house to meet my parents, Miley was there too. She wasn't supposed to be there, but she stayed on purpose to meet my fiancé. At first, she seemed ready to make fun of him, but as soon as she realized that Ken is a doctor, her attitude changed. She spoke like she was flirting, but I had no idea that she was trying to steal my fiancé. I couldn't believe it. I was so mad at Ken and Miley, and I was also mad at myself for letting them push me around. I was speechless. Then Ken said mockingly, "You're so shocked you can't even say anything. You know, a woman like you won't find someone else to marry. But I'm sorry. I've already made up my mind that I'm going to marry young, pretty Miley. I won't change my mind even if you beg." "Who would beg you? Don't pretend like you're okay. It's obviously not true, and it's not a good look." "What?" "Unlike you, Miley is very obedient and cute, and she said she will be a housewife after we get married, just like I asked her." I was irritated by his cheerful voice. I wanted to throw the phone across the room. "Listen, I'm just going to be honest. Who would beg to be with a man like you? I've had it. I'm glad we're breaking up. I'm even more glad that I didn't marry a man like you." "Well, you're just not cute. I was going to end it even if you cried and screamed. Well, good luck being a single woman." Ken hung up the phone after saying those hateful words. When I ended the call, I received a notification. It was from my sister and it said, "I'm sorry I took your fiancé." When my parents found out, they disowned Miley and told her to never come back home. But Miley was still proud. "My husband is a doctor. I won. I don't care that I'm cut off from the family. See you later, sis. Thanks for introducing me to Ken. Keep being ugly and poor and alone." I realized that they are perfect for each other. And again, I'm so glad I didn't marry Ken. Even after we broke up, I had no intention of quitting my job. But I couldn't stand to work at the same place as him, so I transferred to an affiliated hospital. I put even more effort into my work, trying to be polite and energetic and always smiling. Even receptionists can help patients in different ways than doctors. It's not a job that just anyone could do. I worked hard, almost in spite of Miley and Ken. 2 years after Ken and I split up, someone talked to me like he did. "You're always so energetic." "Thank you." Although I said thank you, I was creeped out. He doesn't seem like he works at the hospital. He could be a patient or a family member. I didn't want to be a jerk, so I put a smile on my face, waiting for him to leave. But he didn't move. I said, "How can I help you?" He smiled big. "I've always thought you have such a wonderful attitude toward your work. I'd like to talk to you more. Would you like to go to dinner with me?" "No, thanks." I turned to smile at him. He backed off that day, but this man was very stubborn. Tyler Morris showed up almost every week after that, inviting me out for dinner. Eventually, I gave in and went out with him. At that point, my bad impression of him had already faded. More importantly, he understood how important my work is to me. After a few dates, he asked me to be in a relationship with him. I told him what had happened in the past. I told him, "I'm not holding back, but I'm still scared. I don't want to go through that again." I guess I said the wrong thing. He let out a bitter laugh and looked at me. "I'm so attracted to you. I wouldn't make you sad or make you uneasy. Can you think about a future with me? I would make you happy." Tyler's gaze was enough to calm my worries. I made up my mind and decided to get in a relationship with him. He really cared about me. Even when we decided to get married after a year of dating, he respected my wish to continue working. My parents were overjoyed that I was so happy. They also liked Tyler, and we were able to build a good relationship with each other's families. I was living a happy, fulfilling life at work and at home. But then something happened. My husband and I went on a trip to Hawaii at the end of the year, the only time we could go on vacation and relax together. While having dinner at the resort restaurant, we ran into my sister and Ken. I couldn't believe my eyes for a minute. It had been about 3 years since I'd seen them. Even though it had been so long, Miley and Ken's condescending eyes had not changed. They caught me in their line of sight and came up to me, grinning. Ugh, there are poor people here. Hey, Ken, let's complain to the waiter and ask him to kick them out. Okay, yeah. If we're around these people, we'll look low class. They were talking loudly on purpose so that we could hear them. They were glancing at us and seemed to be enjoying our reactions. There were so many things I wanted to say, but this is a restaurant. There were people eating around us. I kept my feelings in check and continued eating in silence. Tyler, like me, completely ignored them, as if he had not noticed their presence, and smiled at me, saying, "This appetizer is delicious." Don't ignore me, you ugly bitch. This is not a place for someone like you. Get the hell out of here. You're not my sister. What? You forgot about me, your cute little sister? I know you're still upset that I took your fiancé. You're so jealous of me. I heard you're still working. Working even after you're married? Poor you. The two of them started making fun of not only me, but also my husband. I could put up with it if it was just about me, but I couldn't stand listening to them making fun of my husband. I had had enough, and I sprang out of my chair. All right, I was keeping my mouth shut, but just as I was about to snap, Tyler quickly stepped forward as if to protect me. Then he looked at me and said in a calm voice, "Katie, don't let these people make you angry." But they even made fun of Tyler, and I couldn't stand listening to them any longer. He could tell how I was feeling, and he looked at me and nodded. Ken and Miley, who were watching us, gave Tyler a condescending look and snickered. They looked at us and scoffed. You poor people are all dressed up. You may think you're dressed up, but you're not dressed nicely at all. You guys are matching. Miley pointed her finger at Tyler and laughed at him. I can't help but feel bad that I put my husband through this. But Tyler, on the other hand, didn't seem to mind at all, and he turned to the two of them in a matter-of-fact manner. You two are matching too. Your characters match. You both have nothing better to do than to look down on others. Hearing my husband's words, they looked like they had lost it. What? Are you making fun of us? Don't talk to us, you poor bastard. Don't you know who I am? I'm a doctor. I help ordinary people like you. You have no right to make fun of me. Unlike you, a poor man with a plain wife, I can choose as many women as I want. Saying this, Ken hugged Miley with an arrogant and boastful look on his face. Miley and Ken did look good next to each other, but just as before, my husband replied to both of them in the same matter-of-fact manner. I know what you're talking about, he said. Ken, you interned at the medical school at the University of A and have been working at your current hospital ever since, right? That's right. Ken is a doctor at a big hospital. If you know his background, even an idiot knows the difference between him and a poor person like you. Ken seemed somewhat surprised to learn that Tyler knew about his background, but Miley became very proud and began to talk. But she suddenly stopped talking when she heard Tyler's next words. Yes, I know very well. We manage the hospital, you know. We have to know who works there. What? Management? Miley had nothing to say. Ken also seemed to be in a daze, but not fully grasping the situation. Tyler took out his business card and began to introduce himself. Sorry, I didn't introduce myself. My name is Tyler Morris, and I'm the president of the group company that manages the general hospital where you work. What? Ken finally opened his mouth. Miley was just staring at his business card. Yes, Tyler is the president of a group company that manages a number of hospitals. He told me that he first saw me when he came to the hospital for an inspection. During the inspection, he happened to hear that I had broken off my engagement with Ken, and had been transferred to a different hospital. Tyler was surprised to see me working with a smile on my face. When he asked me to go out with him, he said he was attracted to me because of my dedication to my work, no matter what my personal life was like. Because he liked that about me, he respected my opinion that I didn't want to quit my job even after marriage. The job of a president is, in a word, hard work, but Tyler took care of himself. So what Ken said earlier, that he feels sorry for me that I have to work, is just ridiculous. People who only see things their way wouldn't understand. But I'm very grateful to Tyler for supporting me in doing what I want to do. And I can proudly say that I am happy to be married to Tyler. Ken said, "I can't believe he's the president." He looked anxious. Miley looked up from her phone and shouted loudly, "Hey, wait a minute! It is Tyler Morris! He started his own business early on, and at only 30 years old is the president of a major group company. He's been featured in all kinds of magazines. You're screwed." Ken looked at Miley's phone screen and his face turned pale. Miley looked down and Ken got on his knees and began to apologize. "I'm so sorry. I didn't expect Katie to marry someone like you, and I was rude. Don't you see that what you just said alone is very disrespectful? It seems like disrespect for others runs deep in your bones. I find it hard to believe that someone who acts like you is a good doctor." Ken became even more flustered and continued to apologize. But Tyler wasn't having it. He said, "If we keep causing a scene, it will disturb the people around us. Katie, we can order room service." He called out to a nearby waitress and gave her the room number. Then Miley screeched, "That room is one of the nicest ones here! You're kidding, right? Let me go with you!" How could she say that? Like there was any way I was going to allow that to happen. I said, "If we're around people like you, we'll look low class." My husband and I walked away. After getting back to Japan, Ken was given a pay cut when Tyler reported the incident. He said, "Doctors are in high demand. I don't care. I'll quit." Ken was unable to find a job because of bad rumors spreading in the industry. The hospital that finally hired him had a bad reputation. The working environment was terrible, and the wages were low. Ken and Miley constantly fought because they could no longer afford the luxuries they used to. Maybe this is why Ken had an affair with a nurse at the hospital. "I'll make sure I get what's mine." However, there was no way my sister, who didn't want to lose her husband's status as a doctor, would easily agree to the divorce. They ended up going through a divorce settlement and both spent tons of money. After a year of mediation, the divorce was finalized. But my sister never dropped her extravagant habits and blew all the money from the property division and alimony. She now lives in poverty in a shabby apartment. Ken married the nurse he had an affair with, but a medical error happened at his hospital and it closed. Both Ken and his new wife lost their jobs. Meanwhile, I just recently gave birth to my first child and went on maternity leave. Through the birth of my child, I realized how wonderful medical work is, and once again, I felt proud of my job. I intend to continue working with Tyler to balance work, housework, and childcare.
I've been asked to look after my sister's child starting next week. I had finally entered my second trimester and was beginning to feel some ease. All of a sudden, my husband came up with an outrageous idea. "Take care of your sister-in-law's child? I'm pregnant, remember?" Despite my objections, my husband insisted. "You're in your second trimester, aren't you?" Right from the start, he seemed all too ready to push everything onto me. For the sake of the child I'm carrying, I can't take any more. That's when I decided to call a certain person. My name is Anna, 28 years old. It's been almost 3 years since I married my husband, Max. Right now, I'm pregnant with our long-awaited first child. As soon as I found out I was pregnant, I quit my job and became a full-time homemaker. I had initially planned to work until maternity leave, but the severity of my morning sickness made me give up. Thinking that taking irregular days off would be an inconvenience to my employer, I resigned, albeit reluctantly. Last week, I finally entered my second trimester. My morning sickness, which had been so unbearable, has significantly improved, and I'm able to eat to a certain extent. I thought I could finally have a peaceful pregnancy. That's what I believed. Then, one day, as I was preparing dinner, my husband received a phone call. With a grimace on his face, he weakly responded, "What? Starting next week? So suddenly? Uh-huh. Yeah, I suppose. Okay, I got it." He seemed deeply troubled. After he hung up, he dropped his shoulders and let out a heavy sigh. Seriously? What's wrong? Who is that? It was my sister. Your sister? What about her? At my question, my husband made a face. We're going to be looking after my sister's child starting next week. What? So that's why we're taking care of them. Hold on a minute. What are you saying all of a sudden? Summer break starts next week, right? My sister said, "I need some peace and quiet. Could you take care of the kids?" He made it sound like it was no big deal. It was infuriating. I found my anger bubbling up as I faced him, and I had to speak up. Hey, I'm pregnant, you know? Do you understand that? And your sister's kids, they're 3 boys, right? Yeah, I know, but you're in your second trimester, aren't you? What? Is he serious? The second trimester just means some of the early worries have lessened than before. It's not like I can do anything without worry now. His words irked me, and I blurted out my feelings. I don't care about being in my second trimester. Being pregnant means my condition is different than usual, you know. There's no way I can take care of your sister's kids in this state. Well, what can we do? She said it wouldn't be a lot of trouble. So, you're going to ignore how I feel. How can you just say okay on your own? You're so annoying. Think of it as a parenting rehearsal. A rehearsal? 1 elementary school student and 2 preschoolers? You think I can take care of 3 rambunctious boys right now? Well, that's... Cornered by my harsh questions, Max could only look down, guilty. When will this end? I asked, to which he replied something else I couldn't believe. The duration is, about 2 weeks. What? 2 weeks? That's way too long. Are you out of your mind? She's the one who said it. What can I do? If you have any complaints, tell her, not me. You keep saying, my sister this, my sister that. Don't you have your own opinion, Max? Are you going to prioritize your sister's demands over your pregnant wife? Well, I can't help it. She's scary when she's mad. What kind of reason is that? Max has an older sister, Annie, who is 5 years older. Despite being almost 30, Max seems to be completely under her thumb. It must be the age difference as well as Annie's strong personality. He always prioritizes her wishes first. Every time I heard about it, I couldn't help but feel pathetic. Up until now, I would have just resigned myself, saying, well, it's just the usual, can't help it. But the circumstances are different now. If anything happens to the baby in my belly, I'll regret it for the rest of my life. This time, I have to prevent it at all costs. With a firm resolve, I confronted Max firmly. Please tell Annie no. But it's already decided. I don't care. What if something happens to the baby? Can you take responsibility? Why does it have to be like that? Consider my position too. Huh? Don't joke with me. I object. You better say no. If you're so insistent, Anna, you should tell Annie yourself. I can't do it. Max locked himself in his room as if to escape. What's with that attitude? Prioritizing his sister over his pregnant wife? Can such a thing even happen? Anyway, I have to refuse Annie as soon as possible. I immediately tried to call Annie, but there was no sign of her answering. Why? Why isn't she picking up? Annie, who knows my strong-willed nature well, probably thinks it's a done deal once the kids arrive here. Despite calling numerous times afterwards, Annie never answered the phone. She herself has been pregnant and given birth to 3 kids. Why doesn't she understand my feelings? Despite this, how can she think it's okay to hoist her children on me, a pregnant woman, for 2 whole weeks? I could not understand her mindset at all. There's another reason I'm so resistant. That's because I've actually taken care of Annie's 3 sons before. Even though I was taking care of them with my mother-in-law, it was really tough. They ran around the house, shrieked, and threw food everywhere. Even when I wasn't pregnant, it was tremendously challenging to take care of them. There's no way I could handle them in my current state. In fact, my sister-in-law's children are probably even more energetic than they were before. The mere thought filled me with dread. The next day and the day after that, I repeatedly negotiated with my husband. Max, please, can you tell your sister that we can't watch the kids?
But if you're so bothered, why don't you just tell her yourself?
I've tried calling her, but she doesn't pick up. She's clearly avoiding my calls on purpose.
How am I supposed to know?
What do you mean, how are you supposed to know? What am I supposed to do if she won't answer the phone? That's why I'm asking you, Max, to talk to her for me.
You're being too persistent. It's already been decided that we're watching them. Just accept it.
That's nonsense. In the end, my husband never got in touch with his sister, and the day the kids were due to arrive kept getting closer. 2 days before the children were to arrive, when my husband came home from work, I confronted him again. You've given up on declining your sister's request to watch the kids, so naturally you're going to take off of work to help, right? His face went white as he blurted out,
What? Why me? I have work.
I don't want to hear about work. What? Were you planning to leave me alone with 3 kids all along?
But I have no choice. If I don't work, we can't make a living, and I can't just take a sudden leave of absence.
Oh, really? So you plan to dump everything on me from the start?
Well, that is...
Never mind. Keep on doing whatever your sister tells you to. After I sharply dismissed him, he clicked his tongue in dissatisfaction. In that moment, my anger surged like a flame. What? How dare he act that way? This whole situation started because he didn't firmly decline in the first place. I can't stand this. I'm not going to be manipulated any longer. I immediately decided to return to my parents' house. So I dialed my mom's number back at home. Hello, Mom? It's me. Oh my, it's been a while. What's up? Well, actually, as I narrated the events of the past few days, my mom's reaction was unexpected. I see, but no, you can't come back here. What? Why? I'm really stressed out with what's happening right now. It's okay. I'm not saying you should handle it all by yourself. I'll come to you. What? What do you mean by... I'll come there and straighten out Max and those kids. Any husband who can't take care of his pregnant wife isn't worth a dime. We need to fix his attitude now. But, Mom... Before I could finish my sentence, Mom cheerfully reassured me. It's okay. I won't let you be wronged. Just leave the rest to me. Okay. All right. I'll be there the day after tomorrow. And just like that, the call ended. Although I was worried, the idea of my mom coming over was reassuring. And then 2 days later came. Earlier than expected, at the crack of dawn at 6 a.m., my sister-in-law left her 3 boys with us. Woken by the loud voices of the children, I stumbled out of bed. I let them into the house, but it didn't take long for them to start arguing. "Hey, this is my game. Don't touch it." "Whoa, brother hit me." "Auntie, I'm hungry." It was like a war zone. Hold on, all this in just 1 hour of their arrival? Why would the argument start so quickly? Just then, my husband in his sleep woke up.
Okay, take care of the rest.
What? Wait a second. You're still going to dump this situation on me?
I don't have a choice, do I? I have work.
This isn't a joke. Just as I was about to shout at him, the doorbell rang.
I'll get it.
He said, heading for the door as if escaping.
Yes. Who is... Huh?
Long time no see, Max.
Mother-in-law?
Saved. Mother has arrived. Max, my husband, seemed confused at the sight of my mother.
Why is my mother-in-law here?
Why do you think? You are not only neglecting Anna, who is pregnant, but also accepting your sister-in-law's children without thinking.
Well...
Anyway, it doesn't matter. I'll be taking care of the kids for the next 2 weeks. Is that right? You're about to become a father, Max. I won't allow you to just stand by and watch. At Mother's words, Max hastily shouted,
Wait a minute. I have work. And if mother-in-law is here, Anna will surely feel relieved.
What are you talking about? So, if I go home right now, you will take a leave from work and take care of everything?
Well, that is...
Listen, I'm not asking for 2 weeks. Just take a week off on paid leave.
What? Paid leave? For a whole week?
Of course. You're the one who let your sister-in-law dictate to you. Or would you prefer that I take Anna home with me right now?
No. That would be a problem. Okay, I understand. I'll take it. I'll take a week of paid leave.
And so, Max ended up taking a week of paid leave and was tasked with helping Mother take care of the children. Can you boys introduce yourselves? When Mother asked the 3 boys, they started shouting in response. Who the hell is this old hag? So annoying.
Annoying.
Okay, let's start with learning some manners, shall we? I'll be keeping this game of yours. Hey, give it back. Not speaking very nicely, are you? Well, I'll be treating you appropriately then. With a hard glare from Mother, the children let out a small squeak. It's quite something, you know, even if I do say so myself as her daughter, but when my mother gets angry, she's terrifying. When she's mad, she turns into something so fierce you can hardly believe it's the same woman with her normally gentle expression. Plus, my mom used to be an elementary school teacher. There's hardly a better person for handling children. Throughout this time, my mother didn't hesitate to discipline the unruly kids. She made sure they were in bed by 9 p.m. and got them up at 7 a.m. While they were at our place, she set a limit of 1 hour of video games per day. 2 weeks later, I was worried about what would happen, but it all went smoothly. Even the kids who initially disliked my mother gradually started listening to her. We were supposed to send the kids back to my sister-in-law's house that day, but my mother stopped it. Max, I'm taking the kids to your parents' house.
What?
And please invite your sister-in-law to your parents' house too. Is that okay?
Yes, understood.
In these 2 weeks, my husband was entirely reformed by my mother, becoming a more dependable man than before. Max contacted his sister and changed the meeting place to his parents' house. We all headed to Max's parents' house. As soon as we arrived, my sister-in-law, Annie, approached Max with a displeased expression. Max, why on earth are we at your parents' house? I told you to bring them to my place.
Well, my mother-in-law suggested.
What? Mother-in-law? Who the hell's? As Annie raised her voice, my mother greeted her with a bright smile. Nice to meet you. Who are you? I'm Anna's mother. I heard that my daughter has been helping you out. Oh, hello, Anna's mother. Nice to meet you. Why would you dump 3 boys on a pregnant woman for 2 weeks? What on earth were you thinking? What? My mother, who had tried to keep things peaceful, began to directly question Annie, who was attempting to play innocent. Even my mother-in-law, who didn't know the full story, joined in confronting Annie. Hey, Annie, what the hell is going on? You left the kids with Anna, is that true? That is... Do you know Anna is pregnant? Are you aware? No, it's not like that. I just asked Max for a favor. I didn't force it on Anna. The sister-in-law, accused by my mother-in-law, desperately made excuses. Unable to bear the sight, my mother quietly interrupted the conversation. Could you stop this unseemly arguing? Annie, you've experienced pregnancy, right? You understand that even during the 2nd trimester, you can't let your guard down, right? That's... Also, your child doesn't even know how to hold a pencil. Can't show their appreciation for a meal. What kind of education are you providing? Well, I corrected all the points I noticed, but that wasn't for you. It would be the kids who would suffer if they continue as they are. I did it for them. Please don't misunderstand that. Annie's face gradually turned pale and she eventually fell silent. My mother-in-law, who had been listening to the conversation, turned bright red and apologized to my mother, saying, I'm sorry. Even after that, my mother went on to talk about how she had been disciplining the children with all her might for the past 2 weeks. She took the opportunity to criticize Annie's parenting and even criticized my mother-in-law's way of raising her daughter, Annie, with a hint of sarcasm. By the time my mother finished speaking, both my mother-in-law and Annie were completely exhausted. I'm truly sorry. They both bowed deeply to my mother. After that, it seems that Annie was severely scolded by my mother-in-law. What's wrong with you? Because of you, I was humiliated. But I just wanted a break. There's a limit, you know. Forcing your kids on pregnant Anna for 2 weeks, that's insane. Oh, I'm sorry. I won't do it again. Crying loudly, Annie repeatedly bowed her head. By my mother-in-law's order, she was strictly forbidden to leave the children at our house in the future. Ever since then, my husband has become much more reliable. It's probably thanks to my mother, but I also feel a change in my husband's attitude.
Anna, I'm really sorry. I didn't realize that housework and child rearing were so hard.
It's okay. I'm glad that you understand.
I won't be swayed by my sister anymore. From now on, I will prioritize you, Anna, and act accordingly. You may not trust me right away, but I want you to watch me as I strive to be a good husband and a good father.
Thank you, Max. It's okay now. With him as he is now, I'm sure we can build a happy family. Looking at him, who was staring straight at me, I was convinced of that. After that, a healthy baby was born to us, the couple. My husband has become very fond of children, and he is taking paternity leave and taking care of them earnestly. All of this is thanks to my mother's teachings.
It is time for dinner at my in-laws' house. My sister-in-law, who had been away for some time, had finally returned home and joined us at the table that night. The food was set out in front of us, and I watched as my mother-in-law, father-in-law, and sister-in-law picked up their utensils and enjoyed the meal. Then my sister stopped and stared at me. "Aren't you going to eat anything?" she asked. And without hesitation, I responded, "No, I'm the wife. The leftovers will be sufficient for me. Isn't that correct, mother-in-law?" My sister-in-law was in disbelief. Her mother was more concerned with the food than what I was saying. My sister-in-law had come to view her mother with hatred. My name is Kate. I'm a stay-at-home mom who juggles a part-time job, managing the house, and raising my child. My husband is frequently away on business trips, so I am left to manage things alone. Of course, I can't complain. We're in love, and he earns enough money to keep the house in good condition. My main concern has always been my mother-in-law, who lives within walking distance. She often calls me over insignificant things. "The laundry's piled up, so come and wash it for me," she'd say. "In the garden, grass has sprouted. In front of the station, there's a new cake shop." She constantly requests that I run errands for her. It's only natural to need help at times. I could forgive her if she did these things once in a while, but it has become multiple times in a day. Honestly, it's been nothing more than a nuisance. I wouldn't mind assisting my mother-in-law if she had a health problem or some other reason that would prevent her from doing these things on her own. However, my mother-in-law is in perfect health, save for her obesity, but she hasn't reported her weight having an effect on her ability to function normally. At my in-laws' house, I am treated as though I am a maid. My father-in-law, unlike his wife, adores me. However, he is completely unaware of the way that she treats me. My mother-in-law only calls me when he's out of the house. When I let my husband know about this, he claimed that he would talk to his mother about it, and he has. He's warned her time and time again, but she, on the other hand, would make a fuss about it. She would say, "Well, Kate promised that she would help me, but when I asked her to, she changed her mind." Instead of expressing regret, she would cry and claim that I hated her, and that she was the real victim. After several times of going through the same thing, I felt awkward bothering my husband with it anymore. I knew that he was so hard at work, and I felt guilt in asking him to help me repeatedly. Eventually, I stopped asking him. Perhaps this is what my mother-in-law wanted, but either way, I was now in a place where I couldn't talk to anyone about what I was going through, and I spent my days alone dealing with her. As of late, her demands of me have increased. One morning, I was made to clean up my in-laws' garden. She instructed me to cut branches from the trees in the yard and gather them all up. It was exhausting work, especially as the sun creeped higher into the sky. I was sweating, but I couldn't stop to drink. By the time that I was able to take a break, I went inside the house to find that it was past noon. My mother-in-law was laying on the sofa in the living room. She was completely relaxed, watching TV and eating chocolates. Her t-shirt was covered in wrappers. "I'm hungry. Make something for me from whatever's in the fridge," my mother-in-law ordered me, not taking her eyes off the television. I sighed. As I walked into the kitchen, I laid eyes on the mountain of dishes that had piled up in the sink. "You'd better get started. My friends are coming over tonight, and I want the whole place to be absolutely spotless. There's no time to dither," she continues, as she devours more sweets. I asked her to assist me. even just a little, but she didn't care to respond. When she was uncomfortable with what I said, she would pretend as though I was not even there. Soon enough, I cleaned up the dishes and prepared fried rice for the both of us to eat. I set the table for the meal and placed both plates onto it.
Fried rice. Again. Can't you think up anything else?
Even though she complained, she began to eat her meal with gusto. I too was starving. But I was hoping that my husband had messaged me, and I checked my phone before eating. By the time that I had put my phone back down, I was shocked to discover that the plate I had placed in front of me had vanished. My mother-in-law was devouring my meal. She had already finished her own. "That is my food, ma'am," I said aloud. By this point, however, my mother-in-law had already consumed more than half of it.
I'm still hungry. It's your fault that you only cooked a small amount of food. You're just the wife, after all. You'd think that you'd make more, considering you know the wife eats after the rest of the family's finished. But no, you don't even comprehend that.
My mother-in-law quickly devoured the remaining fried rice without waiting for me to respond. There was nothing left. No rice, no vegetables, no meat. Nothing at all.
Now, start cleaning up, my mother-in-law said. My friends will be here soon.
With that, she got up and marched back to the sofa. With a loud tear, I heard her open a bag of chips, spilling pale yellow crumbs onto the rug beneath her. I vacuumed the floor silently. As I'm watching the machine suck up the potato chip crumbs, I can't help but imagine the vacuum cleaner as my mother-in-law, sucking up every bit of food and every last ounce of my dignity into a cyclone until nothing is left behind. I tried my best to relieve my hunger with water as I cleaned up as I had been asked. But the thought was clear in my mind. I swore to myself that I would never help my mother-in-law again. No matter how much she would beg and plead, I would never assist her again. If she wanted a maid who she could tell what to do, to the point of commanding her not to eat, she could try and pay for one. As for me, I couldn't do it any longer. I would not return to help her. Or so I thought. Things changed dramatically soon after that day. My father-in-law had passed out at work, and in order for him to recover, he needed nursing care. Unlike his wife, my father-in-law had always been a thoughtful and caring man. From the time I was introduced to him all those years ago until now, he'd always been kind to me.
I had assumed that you were going to provide us with a grandson. I was foolish to think that you would give us an heir. Absolutely foolish.
When I was pregnant with my first child, my mother-in-law would say these things to me. But my father-in-law would chastise her. He silenced her when she complained about our living situation while we were building our own home. He was always concerned about how I was doing, and always offered his skills and advice to us when we needed it. When I learned that my father-in-law had fallen ill, I knew I had to act. I put on my coat, and I was determined to offer the same care in return. But the phone rang. It was my mother-in-law.
You wicked wife! When were you going to show up and help me care for my husband? Don't you care at all? How ungrateful!
I tried to tell her that I was on my way there, and that I was going to go even if she hadn't asked me. I could hear her start to continue her yelling, but I hung up the phone. I was already worried enough about what my future would look like. If taking care of my father-in-law meant bearing this burden a bit longer, I would do it, I thought. I went to my in-law's house to assist with his care. As expected, my mother-in-law didn't seem to take his care very seriously. After his flare-up at work, my father-in-law had become partially paralyzed on his right side. He's maintained some of his autonomy and can use the bathroom on his own, but he required assistance with meals and bathing. Since this meant he needed care throughout the day, I would drop my child off at daycare and go straight to my in-laws' house. I make breakfast for my father-in-law, wash his sheets and bedclothes as needed, and so on. I then tidy the house and prepare lunch. It was difficult work, but knowing that it was for my father-in-law, it became much easier. Even still, my mother-in-law would not resist. She insisted on criticizing everything that I was doing. She would make a fuss into my ear while I was preparing food for my father-in-law. "This is something for sick people to eat. Can't you bother making something more regular?" "This food isn't for you. I'm making it for Dad," I told her. "You're in good health, and you could make your own food. As I said previous, I'm only here for my father-in-law's benefit. And beyond that, I'm here because you will not take care of him. I believe that you're able to take care of yourself at the very least." "How? How rude! Do I need to remind you that I have the right to leave this house whenever I want? I don't care what happens to him. That all will be your problem if I leave. Make me dinner." Her rage bore into me, and mine was swelling in my chest, but she was right. I couldn't risk forcing her to leave. Every care facility in the area was completely full. Even the wait lists were long. As things were, I couldn't be the sole carer for my father-in-law full-time either. Despite my resentment and desire to rebel against this woman, I had no choice but to submit and make food for her. She devoured it instantly. "Oh, I'm so full," she exclaimed. "Here are your leftovers to eat." My mother-in-law slowly laid down on the low sofa, leaving me to eat. My gaze moved to the pan, inside which there were only a few pieces of cabbage and a handful of noodles. Not enough to feed an adult. Not enough to feed a child. It was pitiful, but I didn't want to waste the food, so I ate it on a small plate, as though it would make the food appear larger. Of course, it was completely insufficient. I ended up eating a sandwich I had brought from home before I finished folding the laundry and made my way to my father-in-law. I noticed that his face was red, eyes wet with heavy tears. "I'm so sorry," my father-in-law said. He must have overheard what happened in the kitchen. I asked him to be sure. My poor father-in-law. He nodded his head yes, and the shame in his expression was too much to bear. "It's because I've become so ill," he said. "That's why she's treating you so poorly." No, I softly assured him. "Please, you've been very good to me, treated me as though I were your own. I could never see you as a burden now, and you're not to blame for any of this." He nodded again in response, thanking me. I felt sorry for him when I saw him like that. That very night, I received a phone call from my husband's sister. I'd only met her a few times before. My sister-in-law lives with her husband in another state. She and my mother-in-law don't get along well, so she doesn't visit very often. "I'm sorry, Kate, for all the trouble. I should go home to my parents' house right away, so that I can be the one taking care of my father," she explained. It had appeared that she had heard about my father-in-law's condition, and that she called me once she discovered I was the one taking care of him. On the other end of the phone, she apologized profusely. I told her that I was merely doing what her father would have done for me, and that I hoped she didn't mind. However, my sister-in-law seemed concerned with something else. "My mother, she began. "You've had quite a rough time there today, haven't you, Kate?" My sister-in-law, like my father-in-law, is wise. She likely knows that my relationship with my mother-in-law has been strained since I've been spending more time taking care of him. I really do appreciate her concern. Though it makes me wonder. My father-in-law, my sister-in-law, and my husband. They are all such kind people. Why is my mother-in-law so cruel? I couldn't help but become curious. Yes, I'm fine for the time being, though. I let the conversation drift, but my sister-in-law seemed to sense the pain in my voice. After a few moments of silence, she said, "I'll be returning home at the end of the year. I'll let my parents know, so you don't have to worry about it any longer, Kate." To be honest, I was exhausted. Housework, childcare, part-time work, and caring for my father-in-law every day. It was enough as it was. But also preparing food and cleaning for my mother-in-law, listening to her words, full of hate and disappointment. I was feeling trapped. If something hadn't happened soon, I would have broken completely, so my sister-in-law's words were very reassuring to me. Until then, though, my mother-in-law remained the same. No, in fact, she was getting worse. As the end of the year approached, she would tell me to clean the kitchen, exhaust fan, wash the screen door, and complete other bothersome tasks. She never took into consideration that I had my own house to tend to as well. It was like my life outside of her didn't exist. I wouldn't have time to prepare a dinner for us all on New Year's Eve with my cramped schedule, so I spoke with my husband and we decided to order it online. What a waste of money, I thought.
If you're going to be someone's wife, you ought to know how to at least make food. What are you good for?
Of course, my mother-in-law was not pleased. "You're a wife too," I wanted to scream at her. But I couldn't. I didn't want my father-in-law to overhear us arguing. I didn't want him to think that this was all his fault. I managed to calm her down by promising to prepare the New Year's Eve meal myself. My sister-in-law arrived at the house on New Year's Eve. She was alone.
Oh, it's your first time home in years, and still you have nothing to show for it. You're all alone now. Whatever happened to that pathetic husband of yours? Did he divorce you for taking his place as man of the house?
My mother-in-law hurls insults at her daughter without even saying hello. But when I saw my sister-in-law, I felt that familiar presence. It was as though I was looking at my own reflection as I saw her calmly respond. I couldn't bring my beloved husband here with me. I couldn't bear you being as cruel to him as I knew you would be. Anyways, I came home to see my father, not you. After saying this, my sister-in-law quickly departed into my father-in-law's room. At this rate, the New Year's dinner was not going to go very well. I had made a few dishes, but by dinner time, those dishes were more lively and pleasant than the people present to eat them. The only sound that I could hear in the quiet living room was a pot simmering softly. I served my father-in-law some food. My mother-in-law began to greedily eat the boiled meat on her plate as if on cue. My sister-in-law only looked on coldly. My husband had been attending his company's end-of-the-year party, and he wasn't with us on that night. Had he been there, the atmosphere might have become tolerable or even upbeat. He always brought that to every room he entered. I was wishing for this as I hopelessly assisted my father-in-law the best that I could. "Kate, why aren't you eating?" My sister-in-law turned to me. I was seated at the table, yes, but only for my father-in-law. There were no plates or utensils available for me. She must have been perplexed, but this had been my life for some time now. I smiled through my pain and told her, "Don't worry. I am the wife after all. A wife must be content to have the leftovers once the family's finished." My mother-in-law nods to my sorrowful words. My stomach aches.
Right you are, she said, her words muffled by the food that she was actively eating.
She was preoccupied with the meat and was thoroughly uninterested in conversing with us. I was curious how she could act like this and still have no shame. Disgusted by her attitude, I made a sarcastic remark. Though, you are a wife as well. Why are you eating now? The family's not yet finished. Before my mother-in-law could react, I was surprised to see my sister-in-law stand. Mama will need to eat a lot of meat while she still can. She won't be able to eat such expensive food if she's kicked out of the house. My eyes widened. My sister-in-law presented his document. A single packet of papers that would change everything. They were divorce papers. My father-in-law appeared to be in on all of this, as I watched the two of them make eye contact. At last, my mother-in-law's hands came to a halt. Father's divorcing you because he's finally run out of patience. He's been accepted into a very nice care facility and is planning on selling this house as soon as he's moved in. My mother-in-law nearly spat out her dinner. She hurriedly swallowed her mouthful and looked at her husband and daughter.
If you dare do something like that, you'll have hell to pay in alimony. Her face was turning red as she yelled her threat.
I'm afraid that's not going to be an issue. If you insist, though, we can take you to court over it. We have ample evidence of your disregard for the needs of the family and the neglect of your husband. My mother-in-law was enraged, but when the word court was mentioned, her attitude swiftly changed. I'm sure she's well aware what her disadvantage would be if things came to that.
I'm sorry for everything.
It was as though she was a different person. She whimpered and kneeled on the spot, begging for forgiveness. My sister and father-in-law, on the other hand, had nothing to say to her pitiful display. She kept apologizing, but there was nothing that she could do. All of us in that room knew that she was in the wrong. You'd better get started signing these papers. Once you're done, you can pack your things and leave the house. My sister-in-law was relentless. The years of abuse had welled up within her, and she would not back down on her demands. My mother-in-law would be packed and gone, leaving her alone in the freezing New Year's weather. It had seemed that my mother-in-law was also abusing my father-in-law on a daily basis. She would berate him, telling him that he was worthless, and that she wished that he would have just passed away instead of becoming such a burden. My father-in-law was very smart. He kept track of her daily outbursts and organized them with the help of my sister-in-law. The data that they had both accumulated was crucial in fighting their case in court. By the end, the claim was settled by offsetting it with a share of property, leaving my mother-in-law homeless. She currently lives in a rundown apartment and is working part-time to get by. She has become a different person in her struggle. She hasn't been able to afford many nice foods and has lost much of her weight. But she is even less healthy now than before. My father-in-law now spends his days living in a luxury nursing home, run by a friend of my sister-in-law. They see to it that he is not only healthy every day, but happy too. He's made friends with many of the other residents. I pay him visits at least once a week. His progress has been astonishing. Thanks to his rehabilitation, he's regained more movement in the right side of his body. He smiles more frequently, laughs more. It's wonderful. I have made a friend too. My sister-in-law and I have become close, and we communicate often. We both want, more than anything, to keep supporting my father-in-law as best as we can. We will treasure the peace that has finally come to us.
I'm Ellen, 32 years old. I've been dating Jim for 6 years, and after 5 proposals, I finally got a yes. Now we're deep in wedding planning, but I'm so happy. I can't help but hum a tune. Wow, we're really getting married. One day while looking over our prenup, I was feeling on top of the world. But Jim, does this really matter? As I signed the contract, I tilted my head in wonder. You see, Jim's one condition for accepting my proposal was to have a prenup.
Assets we bring into the marriage stay our own. No meddling in future inheritances. If things change, like having kids, we'll revise the contract.
I get that it's important, but did we need it in writing? When I asked, he said,
Well, think of it as insurance.
oddly vague. But if that's all it takes to marry Jim, I didn't dwell on it. However, the reason behind this would soon come to light. Jim has 2 older brothers. I met them briefly before the wedding during a visit to my future in-laws.
They're not bad, but both are a little quirky. Listen to them, but don't take everything to heart. Otherwise, you'll get carried away.
Caught off guard by Jim's blunt intro, I chuckled awkwardly, noticing that even my future in-laws agreed. I didn't think much of it, especially since our next meeting was at the wedding. Then, out of nowhere, I get a call one day when Jim's working over the weekend.
Hey, do you like fish?
Caught off guard, I hesitated. Who is this? I rack my brain for anyone who calls me Ellen, but no one comes to mind. But wait, they know my home phone number, so it can't be a stranger. I think to myself as roaring laughter comes from the other end.
It's me, Jim's big bro. Your big brother, Ellen.
My brother-in-law? Wait, is it the eldest or the second son? And what's with Ellen's big brother? I hold my tongue and ask, what's going on?
We're just back from fishing and caught a ton of rainbow trout. Can't eat 'em all, so thought you might like some. Jim loves trout meunier,
he says, which immediately lifts my spirits. Thank you. Jim is working today, but he'll be thrilled to have meunier when he gets back. I hang up and dart to the fridge. Good thing I have onions, bell peppers, and carrots in stock. Just as I finish julienning a heap of vegetables, someone arrives. Ah, it was Evan. I open the door and smile. Then,
quick, the bathroom, and cover the taxi fare for me, will ya?
Okay. I pay the taxi driver as my brother-in-law rushes to the toilet. After settling the bill, Evan comes out of the bathroom, takes a deep breath, and grins.
Thanks. And while you're at it,
my brother-in-law extends his palm towards me.
Hand over some cash.
Huh? Reading my confusion, he clarifies.
For the fish. Let's say $50 should do it.
What? I nearly dropped my wallet in surprise. I should have asked earlier, but I had assumed that the fish were for sharing, not buying. Of course, I felt bad for just taking. So I had prepared some unopened premium snacks as a thank you gift. So I wasn't expecting it to be totally free, but $50? My brother-in-law looks at me as if it's only natural for me to pay. He's made the effort to come here. He's brought a lot of fish, and the last thing I want is for this to turn sour. I calm myself and pull $50 from my wallet and hand it to him.
Thanks, the fish are in the cooler. I'll leave the gear here. Tell Jim to get it back to my place later. Gotta go.
Wait, Evan? I'm puzzled by the casually abandoned cooler and fishing gear in the foyer. Ignoring my confusion, my brother-in-law takes the $50 and swiftly leaves. Wait a second. He's already gone, leaving me blocked in by the gear. What the? Why leave all this stuff here? Our place isn't big. It's in the way. Oh, and the taxi fare. I remember that he hasn't paid me back for fronting the cab fee. I hesitate to ask Jim to both take the gear back home and collect the taxi money. Then when I open the large cooler my brother-in-law left behind, I can't believe my eyes. On a bed of overly piled ice lay only 3 small trout, each barely 2 inches long. You've got to be kidding me. I slumped down in my doorway, defeated. What am I going to do with the shredded veggies? I had other issues, but I was too stunned for other words. Months later, I found myself heading to a cafe.
I have something important to discuss, but keep it a secret from my brother.
The one who reached out in a desperate tone was Brant. My brother-in-law warned that it was an important matter that also could affect my husband's future. and insisted that I shouldn't even tell my parents-in-law or my husband. Though it felt a bit sketchy, the cafe he chose wasn't a shady place, and it was during daylight hours, so I decided to at least hear him out.
Ellen, over here.
As I walk into the cafe, I'm greeted loudly by name. The shout echoes in the cafe, drawing the eyes of other patrons in my direction. Embarrassed, I nod my apologies to the surrounding customers and hastily head toward my brother-in-law's table.
Haha, you're so shy, so cute, Ellen.
His loud voice again attracts attention, making me cringe. Could you keep it down? Cutting off my request for him to speak more quietly, he blurted,
Let me introduce you. This is my new girlfriend.
A beautiful woman stands up from a spot I couldn't see. Hi, nice to meet you. Suddenly, I'm slapped hard across the face by a woman who angrily shouts, Are you kidding me? I'm left stunned, my cheek tingling. Why did a woman I just met slap me? As I'm losing my words, the woman storms out, loudly declaring, This woman is your new girlfriend. I'm disgusted. Goodbye to you. What the... Evan, what is going on? I wince at the pain on my cheek as I start to demand an explanation. Why did this just happen? Anger surges up inside me. You said this was important regarding my husband's future. Outrageous, I protested, but my brother-in-law just laughed it off. My brother-in-law chuckles.
Sorry, we were breaking up. You helped me clear the air. Thanks for playing the role of the girlfriend. Hey, don't get mad. Let's talk this through, Ellen.
Don't call me Ellen. Although I'm furious, my brother-in-law is unfazed.
Oh, come on. This kind of thing happens.
Are you kidding me? This is the first time something like this has happened to me. How can I possibly stay calm? I couldn't help but yell. Then my brother-in-law says,
Well, Ellen, you're scarier than you look. Surprising. But hey, look around. You're freaking out the other customers.
I snap back to reality. As I look around, I see a multitude of faces staring at me. Confusion, annoyance, curiosity. Unable to withstand the gazes, I crouch down. My brother-in-law strides past me.
Well, see you. Say hi to Jim for me.
Evan, wait! Before I could catch up, he's out of the cafe. Then a timid waiter approaches me.
I'm sorry, your bill?
What the heck is going on? I wouldn't have shouted just like that if no one were around to hear me. I was fed up with Evan and Brant for what they had put me through. I told my husband everything, and we agreed to ignore any messages from his brothers, unless absolutely necessary. Any necessary communication would go through my husband, and that's how we'd been handling it. But when it comes to my parents-in-law, it's a different story. They've always been wonderful to me, and besides, they're my beloved husband's parents. There's no way I could say no to joining their 60th birthday celebration. Wow, this place is bigger than I imagined. It's breathtaking, and the garden looks amazing. Is that a guest house? Yes, the main house is relatively new, but the guest house is a relocated traditional home. It's about 230 years old. Thatched roofs and verandas? Does that work well? Can I take pictures later? My mother-in-law, who loves old buildings, looked delighted, which made me smile too. Of course. My mother-in-law's cheeks flushed charmingly, and next to her my father-in-law leaned against a thick pillar, squinting in satisfaction. They both looked incredibly happy. They'd requested the party be held in this old house I'd recently inherited from my grandparents. Our first meeting was during a tour of old buildings. We sat side by side on the porch, had coffee, and hit it off when we realized we were the same age. It was some time ago when my father-in-law shared his bashful story of how he and my mother-in-law first met. Perhaps I should have invited you before we started moving the furniture. I felt a pang of regret. This house had been rented out as a restaurant until last week. After its closing, they had requested to tour the empty place, but maybe I should have shown it to them when it was still furnished. No worries, it's perfect this way. The peace and quiet lets us really soak in the atmosphere, my mother-in-law reassured me. True to their word, my parents-in-law arrived 2 hours earlier than the party was scheduled. taking their time exploring the house and enjoying coffee on the veranda. And then the peaceful atmosphere was broken by noisy footsteps.
What? Only Jim is here to welcome us? No one else? And catering for dinner? Seriously?
It's hard to believe. The only one who gently set Brant straight was my husband, Jim.
Come on, this is Mom's request, and you act like it's a letdown. But this is a deluxe bento box from a popular restaurant.
Jim says this with his usual smile, the one I love so much.
You act like it's just any lunchbox. Why didn't you just book the place during business hours? You're too cautious, Jim.
Evan sighed as he said this. But seriously, how much does he think it costs to book an entire upscale restaurant? You're complaining about today's party expenses being high, and you call me frugal? Plus, they haven't even paid me back for the cab fare from when they dumped those 3 measly trout on me, or for the expenses from their lovers' quarrel. I can't just let them walk all over me. I muttered some choice words under my breath. This was all unfolding on the day of my in-laws' 60th birthday celebration. As soon as my parents-in-law were off exploring another part of the estate, Brant blurted out,
Hey, I've got a great idea.
Yeah, your great idea doesn't usually mean good news for me. I must have shown my thoughts in my face because my husband sitting next to me looked concerned. And sure enough, both Evan and Brant started to smirk.
We're family, aren't we?
My husband tilted his head, clearly puzzled by the sudden inquiry.
This place is closed now, right? Yes it is.
My husband nodded, and the 2 brothers leaned in eagerly.
Man, you hit the jackpot, marrying into money. Yeah, really. You've got this massive estate all to yourself now.
They sang this in a sycophantic duet.
Are you guys misunderstanding something?
But my husband's words went in one ear and out the other.
Can't hog it all to yourself, right? A little sharing won't hurt.
At this point, their enthusiasm almost made me nauseous. Then it dawned on me. What would you like? I forced a smile, and their eyes lit up. They clearly thought that my inheritance was also my husband's, and by extension theirs to enjoy. As if. When the topic of my inheritance came up, my husband asked,
You've stored the prenup safely, right?
I promise I won't interfere with what's yours, but I'm here if you ever need advice. That's what my husband said, and he really never asks for even a single dollar. I love how kind, clear-headed, and continually endearing my husband is. In stark contrast, the pitiful state of the 2 brothers. With people like that, there's no need for reservations.
The location is prime real estate. Just step outside and you can get whatever you want right away. Plus, the mansion is really massive. I mean, it's too big, isn't it?
Evan remarks.
What if we told him, from today, your brother's family is going to live here. Cut ties if you're not okay with it.
Brant says, grinning. I took a deep breath. Sure. The brothers tilted their heads in unison.
Really?
Despite having initiated the conversation, they seemed a bit taken aback when I reassured them. It's fine, really. Feel free to do as you please. Not just Evan's family, but you too, Brant. Here are the keys. Handing them the bundle of keys, they all looked pleased with themselves.
Good on you for being so understanding. Nice going, sis.
Eagerly, they began their moving preparations.
Ellen?
I turned my real smile toward my concerned husband. Don't worry, it's all good. Fast forward to a few days later. We were relaxing at home when the doorbell was frantically rung. Opening it, we found my brothers-in-law pale as ghosts.
What the hell is going on? Tell them to stop now.
They were panicking, full of desperation.
Our house is being demolished. We got home, and there were heavy machines tearing it down. We told them to stop, but they won't listen.
So what are you going to do about it? That was the general vibe coming from my brothers-in-law when I calmly chimed in. Well, that makes sense. Everyone's eyes suddenly turned to me.
What do you mean?
A tower apartment is going to be built there. They can't build it without tearing down the house, can they?
Huh?
Both my brothers-in-law were dumbfounded. The reason the fancy restaurant shut down, or rather moved, was for that project. We kept the utility contracts through the end of last month because of the 60th birthday celebration. Was today inconvenient for you?
Aha.
Realization. dawned on them, and they went pale.
Is this some kind of joke, Ellen?
Even if they say it's a joke, the bulldozer's already here, so there's no room for jokes. Especially when the bulldozer is already here. What's the point of lying about this? Maybe you should start taking out some valuables. Tired of their complaints, I laid out the harsh reality for my brothers-in-law. Look, I made it clear when I asked for the demolition. Please get rid of everything left in the house. If the bulldozer is already working, I guess this will be over sooner rather than later. If I were you, I'd stop complaining and start taking out the important stuff. They looked at each other and then yelled.
This is bad. Go, 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 hurry up!
As I watched the two rush out, I turned to my husband. Nobody really told them, huh? My husband sighed deeply with a wry smile.
We've all been strung along enough. Maybe a hard lesson is what they need. I hope it wasn't too much trouble for the workers, though.
Yes, I had informed not only my husband, but also my in-laws that I'd given the keys to my brothers-in-law and that they were planning to move. Of course, I'd also told them that the house was already sold, including the date of the turnover. So the decision was in their hands, whether or not to tell their brothers-in-law about the truth. In the end, everyone kept quiet. Don't worry, the buyer and the contractors are already in the loop, I assured them. I had a feeling it would come to this, so I had explained it to the buyer in advance.
I hope they learned their lesson,
my husband said. With that, we went to sleep. The next day, I can't believe they went this far. My mother-in-law sighed heavily. In the living room, my brothers-in-law seemed to shrink. They couldn't get in during the daytime because the workers stopped them, so they snuck in at night.
Well...
Yes, they had ignored the no trespassing signs and tried to take valuables in the middle of the night. But a neighbor noticed their flashlight and called the cops, so they were easily caught. So you even managed to get into trouble with the police without taking anything of importance, my mother-in-law continued.
Well, you see.
My brothers-in-law attempted to explain, but no one was interested in their excuses. The past wrongdoings also came up, making it even worse for them.
Both of you should apologize to Ellen,
my husband said. But then Brant, who had been meek until now, suddenly snapped at me.
It's her fault to begin with. She tricked us. She willingly gave us the keys. Yeah, right. What's with this hypocrite? Selling the house without even telling us?
Faced with their unjust accusations, I could only offer a wry smile. I think you're misunderstanding. That property, both the land and the building, were inherited by me. Jim even drafted a prenuptial agreement to protect it. So you guys never had any rights to it to begin with.
What prenup? Contract?
I had no intention of elaborating on the term prenuptial agreement, which seemed like a curse word to them. Also, the sale of the land and house was consistent with my grandparents' wishes. They had considered selling it several times before, and yet my grandparents had wanted to keep it as long as they were alive. To be honest, maintaining it was too much work, so when I inherited it, my grandparents had suggested I proceed with selling it. So I just followed through with the realtor my grandparents trusted. Of course, it's my right to sell the property. My brother-in-law has no say in it.
But aren't we family? Don't be petty.
While considering whether my brother-in-law would argue further, I think back on my past. I started taking marriage seriously about 3 years ago. My dad raised me all by himself. My mom passed away right after giving birth to me. Dad and I were the best of friends. We'd go camping in the summer and snowboarding in the winter. So many memories. But then, out of nowhere, he got sick and passed away. I felt pathetic for never being able to do anything for him, and it broke my heart to feel his absence in the home we had shared. My husband is the one who comforted and supported me through this. He helped me with the funeral and rituals, made warm soup for me when I couldn't move all day, and spent nights talking about memories with Dad. He was there for me, patiently and lovingly, as I came to terms with my father's passing. If we're getting married, if we're going to be together forever, it has to be you, Jim. If there's something you don't like about me, tell me and I'll change. I shouted that during my 5th proposal, and I convinced Jim, who hesitated because of his troublesome family, to marry me. I don't regret that decision one bit. I always wanted to honor my grandparents' wishes after my dad passed away. And then there are these in-laws of mine. You haven't learned your lesson, have you? I was going to go easy on you, but not anymore. I'm going to demand compensation for all the trouble you've caused.
That includes taxi fares, overpriced fish, emotional distress from slaps, food and drinks at the cafe, utilities you used extravagantly in that mansion, and more.
My husband enumerates the damages, leaving my in-laws speechless.
Are you serious? Down to the last detail? Are you thieves or what?
And then there was more to come for my tearful in-laws.
We're cutting ties. Yikes. Wait, Dad, please.
Afterward, they were ousted from the family, shunned by distant relatives, and left with no one but each other in a tiny one-room apartment. Is this really okay? It's so wonderful. In the newly built tower condominium, we became neighbors on the same floor with my parents-in-law. Of course, one of the sale conditions was that we'd get a whole floor in exchange for the land. Thank you for accommodating my wishes. Some parts of the old house my grandparents left behind, like beams and furniture, were incorporated into our new home. We took new photos with my in-laws. We'll display these next to the old pictures. Captured there were the smiles of all my loved ones. I resolved to cherish these smiles forever.